Hello everyone, it's daskro again, and it's episode 6 of Guns I Know. And on this edition, we'll be talking about different types of semi-automatic firearms, how they operate. And I got 5 different examples that we're going to talk about with 5 different types of actions. And I'm also going to be answering your questions. I got a bunch of them. There are so many questions I got the last few weeks. Man, it was really hard to choose which ones I wanted to answer or not. Some I may just have to answer later because I'll tell you a lot of good questions this last 2 weeks. Let's go right into this. Now, semi-automatic firearms use some kind of mechanism in order to cycle the bolter action and eject the spent cartridge and load a new cartridge. And there's a number of different ways that this can be done. And I've mentioned a few of these every so often in past episodes. However, I would sort of set things straight, clear the air about the different types of actions out there. And I have 5 different examples I'm going to talk about. And we're just going to go from, I don't know, we'll just do this by ear. So, first one on this, what do we got here? This is a PPS 43 made in Poland. It is a short-barreled rifle, so it's a Title II registered firearm. And it's it's a short-barreled rifle because it has a shorter than 16-inch barrel and has a folding stock, or a stock more, generally speaking. So I can push this up and it folds up. That's kind of cool. But we're not going to talk about this gun per se, but instead going to talk about how the action works. This gun, PPS 43, is a semi-automatic clone of a submachine gun, a full auto gun. And it utilizes a system in semi-automatic parts different from its full auto counterpart. But I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what this does and how it operates. Regardless of whether you're talking about the full auto version or the semi-auto version of this gun, you have what's called a blowback system. This is how this gun operates. You see, when a cartridge goes off, recoil occurs. Force, tremendous kinetic force, pushes against all surfaces. The barrel, the trunnion, and the bolt itself. And in the case of submachine guns, pistol caliber machine guns, what happens is this tremendous amount of force is exerted on the bolt. And what they have found is that if you have a bolt and to a lesser extent recoil spring or bolt spring that have certain properties in terms of weight and in terms of tension, you can reliably cycle that bolt back and forth simply by the recoil of that cartridge going off, or the blowback. This is called a blowback firearm. This blowback firearm is, in this case, a closed bolt design, which means that it has a firing pin that has a hammer that hits it, and then when it gets hit, it hits that primer and it goes off. It means, though, that the gun at rest is in the closed position. Now, what do I mean by this? I'm going to put this back as fast as I can to try to show you guys what I'm talking about. So I have to put this thing back real fast. And gonna do this like that. How do I do this? Is that how? Yeah, that's how it does it. So there you go. It means that when I'm ready to fire this gun, it looks like this when I'm ready to go. The bolt is closed. There's no opening between that shows the cartridge or anything else. And when it fires, ba-bam, it goes back, and then it ejects the old cartridge and puts in a new cartridge. And that's how it operates. Now its full auto brother doesn't operate this way. Its full auto brother is actually an open bolt design, which means that when the gun is at rest, ready to fire, it does not look like this. The bolt is actually held back like this, and you can actually see the cartridge exposed, in the magazine, and you can see that there's nothing in the barrel or in the in any of the spaces inside, nor it should be. And when it goes down, when you pull that trigger in full auto, the bolt slams forward, and that firing pin is actually a permanent firing pin. It's actually welded in place, and so the moment that it slams forward and that cartridge is in its seated position, it will make that cartridge go off. And then it repeats it and forces it back and does it again and again and again. It's a straight blowback design. It can work an open bolt or closed bolt. This one's a closed bolt design, semi-automatic, as per ATF rules. Open bolt semi-automatics are very rare. They made a few of them in the 1980s, but most of them are, ATF said, no, you have to stop building those. In this case, it was the guys who made the Mac 10s and Mac 11s, and they later became Caltech. Anyway, let's talk about the next one. So we know a blowback design. There's a certain amount of kinetic force being pushed back, and that moves the bolt and puts tension on its spring, and it goes back and forth. However, there's limitations. If you want to put a larger caliber cartridge in a blowback design, you have to have a heavier and heavier bolt and a heavier and heavier spring. And when you add a much more powerful cartridge, it puts more wear on the gun, and it makes blowback impractical. So we go to the next one. The next one, I'm not going to do this one next. I'm going to talk about how the AK-47s were. This is a Romanian AKM and from 1980. And I got wood and stuff. That's kind of cool. But how does this one work? Well, I've shown you guys this before, and it works very simply through what's called a gas piston. The gas piston doesn't do anything with the recoil itself. It does nothing with it. Instead, what it does is, uh-oh, this is a little stuck. I need to get this thing off. Now how do we fix this? Well, we can do something easy and just hit it with the magazine. So, there you go. Now you guys are like, oh man, daskro, you are hurting that bolt so much, you shouldn't do that. Oh no, don't do that. I don't care. I mean, it's my gun, I can do what I want with it. And so I did wiggle this out, a little tight fit, that's okay. Take it out. And what do I got here? Oh yeah, I got a gas piston. This is because there's a little hole that bleeds out the gases as the bullet pushes forward. There are gases that are behind that bullet. Those gases are then bled out through a little port, and then that gases are all pushed up against, in this case, the piston. The piston moves back, and it moves not only the bolt carrier but also the bolt. Now this bolt is not like the PPS 43 in that it simply goes into place. This one actually rotates into place. And so if you can imagine, it is moving forward, and then when it gets so close, and there are some grooves that basically turn it in place or rotate it in place, and then it creates a seal around two locking lugs so that no matter how much force is being pushed against the bolt from the cartridge going off, the blowback, it's going to stay in place. It can only rotate back when the gas piston and the bolt carrier move it to do so. When it actually moves back, no matter how much force, relatively speaking, it won't go back. Now, if it has so much force that it blows up the entire gun, that's a whole other story. The obvious issues with it is that, one, it rotates back and forth, which means that it has to be completely rotated in place and locked in place or in battery, or else you may have an out-of-battery fire and the gun explodes, and that's really bad. Generally speaking, the AK is very, if they're made properly, they can take quite a bit, and so it works out pretty well. And this type of gas piston system is what's called a long-stroke gas piston system. Gas piston, that it still uses a piston, which is this thing here, but it has one solid piece. It's one big stroke going back and forth. That's all it does. We're going to put this thing back and talk about, it's a variant very similar to the AK, and that's the FN FAL. This one's always really tricky for me to get into. This one has really tight tolerances in terms of when it was built, and so I just have to sort of get it back and forth until I get it in. So you'll have to bear with me as I try to haplessly put this back together. Some AKs are a bit more temperamental than others in terms of the build, and it can be due to a receiver or something else around those lines. Come on. I may just, if I can't do this in 10 seconds, I'm just going to put it down and do it another time. Sometimes this happens, guys. So, oh well. I'm going to put this down and put it away for right now. So I can't Can't get it. All right, so say goodbye to that Romanian AKM. I may have to take a file to that to try to get that bolt back in easier. Let's not worry about that, though. Let's talk about the FN FAL. This is a short-stroke gas piston system. It's very similar to the AK, but has some major differences. In this system, I'm going to take it apart. Why not? I'm going to lock it and pull it up. Come on. There it goes. And hello. Here's the bolt. And we got that. That's cool. And then we have, one thing that we notice here is there's no spring, unlike the AK. Where is that spring? Well, there are multiple springs that are in place for this system. You have a spring here in the stock that moves the bolt back and forth, but you also have a secondary system. If I move this kind of gas port block out, come on. I don't want to do this again. Come on, there you go. Come on. There it goes. What do I have here? Uh-oh, I have a gas piston, but it's separated from the bolt carrier and bolt. And that's because, and I can't really pull this out right now because it's really lodged in. But inside here is a spring that only operates this gas piston. It is not connected to this bolt and bolt carrier. Well, how is that different from the AK we just saw? Well, it bleeds off gas just like the AK, and it pushes that gas piston. But since the gas piston is operated by a separate spring relative to that of the bolt and bolt carrier, the only thing that happens is that when this is pushed forward, it can only go a certain amount of distance before it stops. It doesn't go the full distance and simply slam into the end of the receiver, unlike the AK. This actually stops. And so the amount of force being pushed on this bolt and bolt carrier will stop at a given distance. And then once that stop is in place, you'll have some inertia that keeps on moving it forward or backward, but then the spring and the stock will move it forward again. This is called a short stroke system because it really is only going a certain amount of distance. It's not the full force of that piston is not going directly back into the system. And this makes the recoil a little bit more manageable. It makes since you have essentially a mass here that is only limited to going back and forth here, whereas most of the gases when they're diverted out, they are essentially bled out within this system and not fully transferred onto the bolt and bolt carrier. This FN FAL is also a bit different because it actually has not a rotating bolt, but a tilting bolt. A tilting bolt in the sense that it goes up and down, like this. Up and down, up and down. And so it tilts into place. It can take maximum amount of pressure because it's on a milled receiver. And then when the bolt carrier moves backward, it tilts back and then can fire once, and then can rotate or recycle and then fire once again. Now, that is a gas piston system. And as I put this back together one at a time, I'm going to start talking about another way of doing this. And that is using a gas impingement system. Gas impingement systems are what we commonly see in sort of the AR-15s out there. If I can, hopefully I can get this done. Come on. This actual little bolt that I'm trying to work that together. There you go. It actually has a little mechanism where you can basically close off the gas system. And when you do that, it's designed so that if you're using a grenade launcher, you could then launch a grenade using that. That's kind of neat. So we're done with that. Or no, we're not. We still need to put the bolt in. So I'm going to pump up the receiver, and then I'm going to just slide it in. There you go. And I'm good. Am I good? Yeah, I think I'm good. Yeah. So, gas impingement system. That looks good. Gas impingement systems on the AR-15. Gas impingement means what? It means that instead of having a piston that drives the system, it's driven by the gases directly. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here we have an AR-15 bolt. The AR-15 bolt has this little, thing that sort of looks like where a piston would connect to, but it's actually not. And notice this is really, really dirty, and here's why. You see, I'm going to put this back, and hopefully I can do this. I haven't done this in a while, so bear with me. I'm going to pull this. No, is this going to work? No, I don't think it is. Come on. Nope. Oh, I got it. There we go. So I got one of these, but I got to get the other one now. Come on. You're going to see me struggle. Isn't that great? There you go. You can actually buy tools to make this a whole lot easier, but I'll tell you, I don't have any. So, why isn't this coming off? There it goes. Right now. There we go. Look at this. Look at this, guys. This is a little tube. It's a little tube where the gases are bled out right here, and the gases actually travel this little tube all the way to the end of the receiver. And when the receiver, when the bolt is in battery, that little tube goes right into this little divot. And so when the gases go up and go back into the receiver, it pushes this bolt back with such force of those gases. And then it moves it back and moves it back forth because there is a spring and a buffer here in the stock. And then it's ready to fire again. AR-15 utilizes a rotating bolt just like the AK, except it has a whole lot more lugs. As opposed to 2 lugs, it has what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It has a lot of different lugs. And that's kind of nice. Now, for those that have heard this before, AR-15s are guns where it shits where it eats. And that's true, because all of the excess gases are going back into the system. It makes it somewhat of a reliable gun in that respect. And don't believe what you hear about the rumors of how bad AR-15s we're talking about. All that came from the Vietnam era when they were using really shitty ammunition. But nowadays AR-15s are much more reliable, and the gas impingement system is very good. And also, gas impingement has some nice things going for it in the sense that it actually improves accuracy quite a bit. And because the barrel is basically moving less as it fires because you have less mass moving back and forth relative to the barrel. So that's sort of the gas impingement system. Now, should I even try to put these back on? I may just have to do, I just have to put all these back together later, because I'll tell you, I don't want to waste too much time. I have so many questions that you guys have asked me, and I want to be able to answer them for you. So let's put this back, what I can put together, and we're going to put this gun down, and we're going to keep on doing. I'll put this back too, just for... All right. Where am I? Oh yeah, the last gun, 5th gun. This gun right here is an HK91 or G3, and it uses a different system as well. It doesn't use gas impingement. It doesn't use long stroke or short stroke gas piston. It doesn't use blowback. Instead, it uses what's called delayed blowback. What is that? Well, delayed blowback is similar to blowback, but it's designed for larger calibers. And what it does, I'm going to just start taking this apart, is it uses some kind of mechanical block to keep the bolt in place, as opposed to rotating the bolt in place or pivoting back and forth. Instead, this one utilizes rollers. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but I'll give it a try. So here are some rollers. I'll do it this angle. The rollers are these little sort of rolling things. And what these rollers do is that when the gun is in battery, these rollers move into a position in which they are incredibly rigid. And they butt out maybe, I'm making this up, I'm guessing around 4 or 5 millimeters. And they're incredibly hard to move back in place. And if you can put enough force on them, it'll actually will move the bolt in the bolt carrier. And it just turns out that because of the properties that they've designed out of this, Heckler & Koch have created a system where when there's a certain amount of blowback, be it in this case from a 308, it will force these rollers back into their position they are right now, and then make the bolt move backwards with the amount of force that is left, or the amount of blowback that is left after this these rollers have been knocked back into a position of rest. And then it goes back. And so these rollers delay it a bit because they have to be put into a position where the bolt can move back and forth. And then the rest of the kinetic energy goes into the bolt and bolt carrier and moves it backward and forward again. It doesn't bleed any gases off the barrel at all. Again, this makes it a very accurate type of system. If you look at the MG42 from World War II, the Germans used a delayed blowback system for that gun as well, albeit it was a little bit heavier than this, to say the least, but the same basic concept. So those are kind of the 5 types of systems that I have out there. There's a few other systems in terms of delayed blowback. There's a few different types of fire control systems, which are for the most part independent of this, that I didn't go into, be it ones that use hammers versus striker systems. And the pistols out there, all the pistols out there use a variety of different systems, anywhere from blowback to delayed blowback. Some even use different types of gas diversion, most notably the Desert Eagles. Nonetheless, though, let's put this back and get into the questions, because look at this, look how dirty I am. As I mentioned before, I don't clean these guns nearly enough, and so when I take them apart, I get a little dirty. That's okay, though. I don't mind getting dirty now and again. Let's go into the questions while I put this back together. The first question is from Always Pro. Could you make any gun a pistol to import it? Now, I had mentioned in the previous episode, episode 5, about the legalities of importing different types of firearms and how pistols are exempt. And the answer is yes, as long as it falls within the definition of a pistol. So, as an example, this PPS-43C that I showed you the first example of, and as soon as I put this back, I'll show you what I'm talking about. This gun came in as a pistol, not the gun that I'm holding, but instead the, oh, I need to do something. Put that back. Let's put this back. There you go. There you go. And I'm almost done. See, look how easy this one is to disassemble. Not so much with the other ones. So PPS-43C, which is this one right here, came as a pistol. Here's how it came in as a pistol. It came with a, I don't know, it came with a bunch of high-capacity magazines. I mean, that's usually not within the definition of a pistol. But it came in looking like this, with the stock welded to the rest of the gun. Welded. So the stock was present, it just wasn't functional. But it came in as a pistol because it has a certain amount of pistol, characteristics in that respect. And it was imported, and then I had it converted by removing that weld and putting the spring so that it can load back. And now it's a short-barreled rifle. Pistols are completely exempt from the 922R compliance that I spoke about last episode. And there's a number of guns that have come in as pistol. Yugoslavian, or now Serbian, M92s are coming back in force as pistols. The Romanian Dracos, which I showed you in, I forget what episode it was, 2 or 3, same thing, came in as pistols. We're even seeing other types of guns out there. But here's the catch, though. The catch is they have to be new production guns. You cannot simply take an MG42 would be a good example. How about an MP38 and then chop off the stock and say it's a pistol? It has to be new production, because if otherwise they'll say, well, it's a machine gun, you're simply taking off parts and you're putting in old ones in. We know it was once a machine gun, and according to U.S. law, if it ever was a machine gun, it still is a machine gun. So it has to be new productions. This is a new production gun, just like that Romanian Draco and the Serbian M92 are both new production guns. This is a new production gun made in Poland in 2009 or 2010, whenever it was. So as a pistol, and then from there it was brought in. So that's sort of the limit. That's sort of the extent of that. If in theory there was some company that would, let's say H&K wanted to import in G36s, they could import in G36 pistols. They could do it if they wanted to, but they don't. Next question. The Moldy Burrito says, how illegal is it to transport illegal weapons to the United States, like shipping certain parts through multiple systems? What is the jail time for it? Not like I'm going to try it. I just have seen a lot of movies and wondering if you knew that. Thanks. I'm subbing. Positive. Happy face. So, I can't speak to what the jail time is or anything else around those lines, but it's very illegal. It's a felony. And there was a recent case where the young man in Florida who was selling Chinese ammunition to the Afghan army tried to bring in some South Korean 100-round Betamags into the United States without a license, and now he's in court fighting that, and will probably go to federal prison for that as well because he didn't have a license for it. Big stuff like that, when you're talking about thousands of, if not tens of thousands of units of things, you can get caught and you'll get in a lot of trouble. That being said, there are people who don't disregard the law and bring in stuff regardless. As an example, if you look at some of these guys from Russia or from the Ukraine who bring in stuff that is new production Russian equipment, like scopes and magazines, that clearly there's no way they could have been repatronized or renationalized to another country and then brought in legally. Instead, they're just putting them in their bag, and they're coming over and they're selling it, one-off item. That happens a lot. There's no easy way to stop it, especially if the customs doesn't know what they're looking at when they come through. Or worse yet, there are companies out there that sell Russian equipment, like Russian parts for AK-74Us or AK-74s from Russia, but they sell them as airsoft parts. And so you go on eBay and it will say, this is an authentic airsoft AK-74U muzzle brake. And then it'll say, this is not a gun part, this is an airsoft part. And they'll sell it, but it's selling from Russia. It goes for a lot of money because the reality is most of these parts are actually real gun parts. Now, the airsoft guys, and I'm not trying to badmouth airsoft guys love going for the authenticity stuff, and they'll actually buy real gun parts and real sights and things like that and put them on their airsoft guns, and more power to them. But people are skirting the laws that way, and that's what it is. And I've personally never bought anything from that or am going to, but it's out there. Next question. The Hero Appeared says, hey daskro, since you have a CNR license, it would be nice to see if some of your guns would fall into that category. Speaking of these guns, they sound like they would be against current U.S. import laws, having to be historically intact. So is the population of CNR guns currently at a standstill, referring to the machine gun registry as being at a standstill? Thanks. Well, I have one gun that I can show you guys that I bought last year and used my CNR. This is a Mosin Nagant M44. It was manufactured in in 1944. That's kind of cool. It's got the Soviet Union cartouche. It was made in Izmash. It has the Izmash sign on it. That's cool. It's got an integrated bayonet. And so if I want to stab someone, I'm going to be ready to go. And I just pull this up, and I'm ready to go. Yeah, get some stab on. It's a shortened version of a Mosin Nagant. It's not a regular one. Chambered in 54R. And yeah, it's a cool gun. I got this, and I used my CNR for it, so I got it shipped directly to my house. And it looks menacing, but it is just a bolt-action rifle. And I've got a few other guns here and there that are CNR. So good question, though, about CNR populations. So, moving beyond 1950s, there are very few guns that are CNR eligible that also don't fall within the purview of the machine gun laws. So, as an example, the AK-47, if it was not a full auto gun, could be brought in under CNR rules. It could, but it's a full auto gun, and full auto is exempt from CNR because there's a machine gun registry, and the machine gun registry nullifies any other laws. But the CNR process, which is basically a certain number of requirements, that it is a military or historical relic that is of a certain age and is a certain authenticity and its original manufacturer. If you look at police-issued CZ pistols, what does CZ stand for? Czech Zabroska? Something like that? That's not right. You guys will correct me on that one. they're coming in like crazy. All these old European pistols are coming in like crazy, and they're CNR eligible. Walther P38s and Walther P1s, which are the later version of the P38s that we saw in World War II and in sort of early Cold War, they're coming in like crazy. And so their pistols are certainly ones that are not machine guns, and as such can be imported in like nuts. It's one of the reasons why that voluntary restraint agreement took place in the first place in the 90s between Russia and the United States, limiting the types of military stuff that Russia could bring to the United States, because the big fear at the time was that the former Soviet Union, Russia, had, no kidding, millions of old Tokarev pistols or old revolvers, the Nagant revolvers. And the fear is that they would bring them in, and these would be sub $100 Soviet pistols. And they would flood the market, and all the gangbangers would use them, and it would cause a new crime wave, and all things like that. That's one of the reasons why the laws were put in place, or that trade agreement was put in place, because the Clinton administration feared that there was going to be this huge flood of surplus guns. Well, the flood still came because other countries still were in the same situation, such as Ukraine and Bulgaria and Romania and former Yugoslavia now, all the non-aligned countries that are consist of it now. So so it's not, the CNR population is not a standstill. It keeps on growing. It's limited just to pistols right now. The last semi-automatic rifles that we saw at any big quantity that came in are the SKSs, because they're CNR eligible, but there are very few militaries that continue to use semi-automatic only rifles in any large volume beyond the SKS. So we're limited in that respect. Let's go to the next question. Mike 240 SE, similar question, says, one question. Why are they keeping the import registry closed? Sounds like it's ripe for an NRA core challenge. Very good question. So the import registry is not really a registry. It's more of a we're just not allowing new imported non-sporting rifles in. It is ripe for a court challenge because the most recent Supreme Court rulings in terms of Heller and McDonald, and then the soon-to-be ones that are coming down the pipe, are all setting the course in that the Supreme Court has ruled consistently that there is no sporting or non-sporting litmus test that you have to do with guns. There is none. And if there is none, that provides enough fodder, if to use a pun, to challenge the 1968 Gun Control Act on those grounds that they can't ban non-sporting semi-automatic rifles because the non-sporting attribute is not constitutional. That would be the way forward, and so I think it will happen. Probably not for another 10 years, but I think it will happen. Flappa Flog says, if the countries set up a factory here in a legal state, couldn't they build their own guns here? Great question, because that's what they do. They do that all the time. So SIG does that right now with their SIG 551s and other rifle clones. Another good example is coming up, the TAR-21, which is the Tavor rifle, made in Israel. They're setting up a factory here in the United States to build the Tavor to sell it in the U.S. market, because the U.S. market is huge. And so the Israeli military may buy, making things up here, maybe, 100,000 rifles, maybe 50,000. They'll sell 50,000 of these rifles over 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe a little more, in the U.S. market. So they don't have any problem doing that. And so some countries do that, or some companies do it, others don't. H&K doesn't, for instance, so that they're problems sometimes. All right, last 3 questions. These are all related, so I'll try to answer them all in one fell swoop. So, Pintiz asks, what does the different endings of the AK models mean, such as AK-47, AK-74M, AK-101, AKM, etc., etc.? Also, you make a video where you actually build from your parts kits. So a second question first, yes, I will do a video eventually, but I need to wait until I get my receiver and things around those lines and get some time set up, because I don't have a lot of time right now. But what do the different endings mean? Well, The AK-47, which I've mentioned in previous episodes, was the original AK line that came from 1948 to 1959. That was the AK-47 line in 3 different types: Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3. AK-74 was the first iteration of the AK-74 line, which was a new AK production that came after the AKM, which was the new production line that came subsequent to the AK-47 line. Usually they mean they have a designation of when they started doing production. This is not true, though, with the AK Century series or AK-100 type series, AK-101, 102, 105, 104. The AK Century series were the ones that were made in the 90s and the 2000s. These were basically AKs that were AK-74s with some cosmetic changes and some slight aesthetic changes and some manufacturing changes, but still in the same caliber and in some new calibers as well, based on the AK-74 line. AK-74M, M stands for modernized. Modernized meant that it had a fully in stock. It meant that it had a few other features like a double dimpled trigger well, so that you wouldn't get that trigger slap as bad from the auto or the safety sear or the rate reducer, if you want to call it the other thing. All of them have different nomenclatures out there, and you just have to look up individual ones. There's no rhyme or reason to any of them. I mean, there's some rhyme or reason between 2 or 3 of them, but not for all of them. But you just got to look them up. Next question, also AK related. Senior Franny says, "Hey, daskro, question for you. What round do you think is superior or more fun to shoot? 7.62 by 39 or 5.45 by 39? I like the I fire the AKM. I like it. Or I didn't like it, but I fired the AK-74 and it was a lot of fun and a lot more accurate. What do you think?" Personal preference. I like 5.45 better because it's cheaper to shoot, it has less recoil, and it's accurate. But the 7.62 by 39, the AK-47 or AKM caliber cartridge is a lot of fun in its own respect to shoot. It has a lot more oomph to it, a lot more punch, and that's really cool to shoot as well. I shoot a lot more 5.45 in terms of volume, but I shoot both. And then finally, WVU Phil, maybe it's West Virginia University Phil, says, besides centerfire systems and Atlantic Firearms, what websites are good to find AK-47, AK-74 parts, kits, and receivers? There's a bunch of them. So centerfire systems is good. Atlantic Firearms is good. Apex Gun Parts is my favorite because they have some really obscure stuff. What other ones? Classic Firearms or Classic Arms. They have good stuff too. KVAR and Arsenal, they have parts kits. So does, what else? Ohio Rapid Fire, which is now known as, I forget what they're called now. Ohio Rapid Fire is no longer anymore. Troy, who owned it, passed away a few years ago, and all of his inventory went to a new place. Ohio Ordnance Works, something like that. So rest in peace, Troy. Sorry to see you go. And what else is there? In terms of AK parts, AK Parts Builder or akbuilder.com. They're good to have. What else? I know I'm forgetting a few of them. I know I am, and I hate that I'm forgetting a few of them because I don't want to badmouth one or not mention one, even though that I want to mention it. R-Guns. They sell a bunch of really obscure parts kits. Most of my stuff came from R-Guns. I think that's about it. I know I'm missing a few, but let's just move on. Actually, that was the last question. Yeah. So, yeah, that's basically it. So I know I kind of ended with a murmur there, but thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the some of this information. If you want me to talk more about these guns, then send in questions, and I'll be able to answer them or try to answer them and go from there. So until next time, guys.